It appears to me today, not just today, but over the last few weeks, it appears to me that this COVID shit show is unraveling on many different levels. And I'm not a big proponent on facts and information because I think that um, people are not swayed by facts and information, but in my experience, people tend to respond to conviction. The people that appear to have the most determination, even, never mind conviction, but, well, conviction is part of being determined. But the determination has been generally from a societal point of view, is usually on the side of authority. The owners have the luxury of appearing to be the most determined, especially since they have enormous support systems behind them, what we call institutions, the institutions of fuck, the institutions of amazing power. This is something that the owners have on their side. So they don't have to be appearing to be too determined. It's kind of built into the system. But from where I'm sitting, I'm I'm observing, I'm finding, I'm feeling in myself a shift in the determination, which is going to quickly overwhelm what authorities, governments, the bastards that run the show, who align themselves with those they believe to be most likely to be successful. It's kind of like that Braveheart scene. He's painted all blue and he's in front of his clan, and he's going up against a 5-to-1 odds in the favor of the king, and he's rallying the troops, and he's telling them, whatever it is that he feels is going to motivate the troops. And his determination, his conviction, is actually the one person's determination. Or let's say there is a core group of the Braveheart group, that hardcore bunch that make their proclamations to the rest of the bunch that he needs in order to succeed. He is the one that convinces the troops, the clan, that we are the more determined. And as it turns out, if it hadn't been for the betrayal by Robert the Bruce, they would have succeeded because they were the most determined. So in my estimation, the way reality works, and it's never what it appears to be, this is very important. This shit show is unraveling. This is how it appears to me. It's going to escalate, I would imagine, quite quickly with resistance. I mean, at the end, anything, I don't know if this is a Rome, at the end of Rome, I suppose. I mean, Rome took 200 years or more even to completely collapse. So it was a long time before the whole shit show there unraveled. It wasn't an immediate thing, and people have their theories on how the whole thing actually worked. Whether it was the barbarians came across, and the barbarians were very determined, and the Romans were flabby and weak, and all that kind of stuff. So my comment today, and creating context again, I feel it's important to understand that whatever it is that is unraveling, which I am very much in favor of course, this operation, this COVID operation, has been so detrimental to. I have certainly felt some of the effects as well. Not that much. I'm kind of isolated. I make my work in the studio. I keep myself, which is, I think, for myself, very important to have this sense of what is real for me, not because somebody tells me, but because I feel it. And this is something that is lost in the sort of motivation in people, that the primary objective, as far as I'm concerned, is to have this, what people might call, to be on the right side of things. It's what I always refer to as conscience, is to follow the conscience. And this comes down to a very local existence. It's not a matter of me influencing the world to change, but it's to change myself. And I think out of that personal change, one can always be better in terms of their actions. But I think this is the most crucial part, in being able to affect the reality that we live in. We change our own world and whatever is around us. And it has ripple effects. I think this ripples out. This is how it sort of works. And I have a sense of quite often that people work on a sort of wishful thinking principle. Religion is quite attached to this idea of wishful thinking. People that are devout in their faith, in their belief, quite often are trapped in a wishful thinking thing, like the types that the Richie of Boston types and the Russian vid fellow and I don't watch that many Christian commentators or the Steve Quayle or the Health Ranger guys who have very good points about everything, but they all see it through a lens of their religious wishful thinking. And I don't want people to be upset for me to say this, but to relate this event, whatever is happening to us, to sort of an immediate result, the rapture, the end is nay, all this kind of stuff is based on wishful thinking, on misinterpretation of whatever it is that is being read. And the Bible is not a simple book to read in terms of its storyline. It can be read like a fairy tale, but it's not a fairy tale. I've researched it in terms of Kabbalah to some extent. I'm not a scholar, but I've understood the principle of the Bible is not something that we can interpret based on little stories. It doesn't work that way. Stories are kind of the surface of something that may interest you to look into, if it's even translated reasonably well. But a story can get you motivated. It's like in my painting, I've always said, I love a good story because a story allows a person to enter your world. I always was really taken by stories, even ones that frightened me, like the Brother Grimm fairy tales. I was really taken by that stuff. I suppose the emotional thrill, the fear, is an emotion that becomes substantive in me, or it became substantive. I mean, the fear emotion was, and I probably was conditioned, and it affect anyway. Yeah. So my point is that this COVID shit show unraveling is, again, a part of the story. There is more to it. Obviously, the immediate effect will be a kind of breathing. We can take a breath. As this gets exposed, we are able to take a breath. Like I feel I can take a breath by me saying this COVID shit show is unraveling in whichever way. There are many indications. I'm going to attach a link to a fellow called Reiner Füllmich, a German lawyer who is doing international lawsuits on the criminality of these injections, which are proven to be not safe. They cause harm, definitely cause harm, and how much harm is enough for someone to be held responsible. Is it like, oh, under emergency, whatever, you're allowed to cause harm? Like Hitler caused a great deal of harm. And then Nuremberg came along and said, you can't create your own emergency to cause all the harm you feel you want to create. This is how it works. The COVID shit show is similar. There is an emergency declared by decree, not by any kind of people saying, yes, this is important to do. No, it came out of the halls of power. These fuckers, these owners, they have a plan and they have backup plans. By the way, people, this COVID shit show is not the final plan. The final solution is not going to just go away. And I say the final solution, conscious of what it meant to the bastards, to the fascists that ran the shit show in Germany. The final solution was obviously to take care of a bunch of the population they didn't like. And it's possible that my thought on the injection is that a lot of the injections were actually placebos. That the harm that the injections are causing were very likely the ones that were not placebos. The reason that, and there have been in this tracking, there have been a lot of documentation about people dying and having very bad effects on this. And it's a test. It's an experimental As people have pointed out, this has been experimental, and Füllmich, the lawyer, is going after these people for ignoring the protocols of what is, not sure what he's relying on, the decency that we expect authorities to function within, this sort of conscience, decency function that he says is totally, they're criminals now because they know they're causing harm. Safe, it's not safe, and they're causing harm. So he's going after them, and we'll see whether or not the legal system can be used in dismantling this shit show. I'm not convinced, but it's an indicator, a good indicator, that it is unraveling, that people are not going to put up with this shit anymore. So here's, just to end this, I'm not going to make it too long, to end this in terms of the unraveling. This is not the final, the final solution, obviously, has been in place in a cyclical sense, in the sense that I don't really understand, historically speaking. There are so many factors here in terms of how the reality we perceive as it appears to be is not as it actually is unraveling before us. We don't understand. We're unable to interpret the signs properly. And the owners, to some extent, have an advantage because there is knowledge, and knowledge is important, very important, in order to create a structure, an organization, like the Masons say, order out of chaos. The reason that slogan is there is because there is an understanding about when something is out of whack. And they're the ones that are going to put, you know, Pinocchio or whoever, the puppet, back together again when he's broken. So they rely on this knowledge. Knowledge is not wisdom, but knowledge is something that facilitates the structures that work around us. Without the knowledge, we're basically fucking barbarians. We're going to run through the forest and scratch each other, lick each other's asshole clean, and that's how we function. This is how grotesque it is in terms of being human. I'm not saying it doesn't work for monkeys and dogs when they go and sniff each other. I'm saying as human beings, we have higher proclivities. And if we abandon that, we abandon our birthright. And one of the abandoning of our birthright is to allow our conscience to be subservient to some other fucker who says this is what you have to do when you know it's wrong. And this is what this shit show has been. Somebody comes out and says, oh, we want you to do this, even though we know, you know, it's wrong. And all the evidence, I will give it, let's say, 3 months. Within 3 months, everybody knew, but they went along with it anyway. And I'm going to have a really hard time with all the people in the sense that they were complicit, knowing. Like from the very get, I was saying within the first week, it's sort of like the Fukushima event, when that plant blew up and is causing havoc for the next million years. When this thing happened, I immediately realized within a day or two how serious this was. And within a few days of the shit show being declared, the 2 weeks to flatten the curve thing, I realized that's insane. It's madness. Because I also understand that a virus is not what it appears to be in terms of the official story. Liam Sheff was really great with this on the AIDS issues. This virus thing, this bogus virus that never actually killed anybody, was the AZT, those vicious, toxic drugs they gave to the gay community and decimated that community and made them feel guilty. Well, I mean, their lifestyle was guilt-worthy. I had some friends who unfortunately perished and died. It was sad because it was an extreme lifestyle that wasn't just restricted to the gay community. I mean, whether you're heterosexual or gay, that didn't matter. Your lifestyle could be toxic and you die. So what's my point? Okay, so yeah, I'll end it off here in the sense what I wanted the context. It's not going to be over in terms of the bigger final solution, because the indicator has been that there is a real drive to eliminate a large segment of the population. And usually what happens is that the authorities don't need to grab into their big hammer. They let people take care of each other. I've experienced this in my community. I was ostracized. I would never wore a mask to anything. And I was And I believe this is illegal, to be refused service in my community. Or they were threatening to call the police on me for not wearing a mask, but that never actually happened. I said, go ahead, do what you have to do. And they realized how stupid that was. But this is part of the unraveling. This isn't going to fly anymore, because it's like people, not just me, but people like me, who said, no, I'm not going to go along with this. I know this is a lie. Wherever you came along in this experience, however long it took you, obviously it's great for somebody to realize now, oh no, this isn't a good idea to get continuous injections that don't work. There's something wrong here. When people realize that, fine, yes, that's what we want, but I'm going to have a very hard time with all the people that I considered my friends or acquaintances that I regarded that went along with this in whatever way. This is going to make it really hard in terms of being able to relate to them, because it's, I guess forgiveness and let him who has no fault cast the first stone. But the damage done has been enormous. This is documented. The damage has been enormous. I keep saying I'm going to keep it short. I'm going to finish of whatever I want to say. Keep it short, keep it long. I'm excited about this. But yeah, so what I'm excited about is this unraveling of the shit show. There's people who are serving the vaccination centers. I'm going to attach the plasma link, the plasma guy who has great videos, who shows how people are now coming out, like Kevin Annett, who has been advocating on the murder of Native children in Canada in the residential schools. More than 50,000, murder by decree. I should attach that link too. Kevin Annett, a magnificent soul who has exposed the bastards in Canada, the church and state, for killing innocent life, which is actually part of what civilization is based on. If you look at all civilization, they have these grotesque rituals of killing innocent people. I mean, and this gets escalated into wars where the youngest are always put on the block and killed. These are ritual sacrifices. This is definitely, if you want to call it that from a religious perspective, the fallen angel, the satanic types who actually indulge themselves because they can, because the most determined run the show. So if the most determined end up being pricks and bastards and fuckers and pedophiles and shitheads that, you know, we follow because you're the most determined to carry on your proclivities. Well, the people of conscience need to become determined in exercising their conscience. That's how it works. That's how things change. So my thoughts about how this is unraveling, that the final solution is in play, but not in the way that, I don't know if this was intended always to be a kind of 2-year thing, because most viruses in our experience of history, whatever a virus is supposed to be, it's never been identified. Viruses do stuff from the inside, they don't come from the outside. But anyway, whatever that is, usually burns itself out in 18 months. This is kind of the idea. So they've gone past that 18-month period. We're close to 2 years, so naturally it had to come to an end in some form. They will attempt to keep it alive through their booster programs, but that's not going to fly, because even the most ignorant, passive, compliant doctors cannot, at a certain point, even if their conscience is out the fucking window, they can't promote this idea anymore, because it's literally, it's like people say, oh, a friend of mine says, well, a friend of a friend is a nurse who says the hospitals are full. Well, the hospitals, in my experience, have always been full in some way or another. Maybe sometimes more, sometimes less. So this argument doesn't fly. And if they're full, make more hospitals. It's like this. If we want to have a health system that works and it's too full, it's not just now. They keep holding this fear level. Oh, we're not going to take care of you because you're going to be sick with something and we don't want to deal with your type of sickness. We're going to make you pay a tax if you have your type of sickness. And if you have your type of sickness and you come to our side, you know, you can still get sick. And eventually we're going to have to tax you. You're going to have to pay for a certain kind of sickness. Well, then, you know, get ready, fat people. You're going to have to pay extra. And if I don't understand why smokers don't have to pay the extra tax and drinkers don't have to, and people that go to McDonald's don't have to pay the extra tax. This has been talked about so much already. So that doesn't make sense either. I don't need to go into this stuff that doesn't make sense. People that listen to me are all on board on this already. What I think I might be adding to this conversation now is that this is not the end of something. It is the end of the first phase, I think, because cycles historically tend to be quite long in terms of an individual's life, not in terms of the big scheme of things when we're talking hundreds and thousands of years, but in terms of our lives. This is not the final stage in this depravity, this authoritarian crackdown, lockdown, pummeling by the bastards. This is not the final part. Something else will arise. I don't believe it to be an all-out war with the arch enemies that are actually complicit with each other all the time. The leaders over on the China side and Russia side and America side and European, they're all the same people. This is well documented as well. If you look at the communist revolution, they were funded by the Western guys. Lenin was sent from Switzerland, funded by the West, by the money guys in the West that wanted to create subversion. And I guess it was time to sacrifice one of their own. The Tsar was sacrificed in this program, under this program that was going to dismantle and kill 100 million people. This was part of the idea. So this is still in play. This is the frightening part of it, that the bloodletting has begun. It's not in a war. It won't be in a war, but it'll be a bloodletting that is happening through other subversive means, possibly the injection. I think that if in fact I'm fairly certain that there were a large number of placebos being administered to groups. So if let's say 80% of the people have been injected, if it is that much, I don't think so, but maybe only half of that was the actual injection. This is what I'm thinking, and that would be the death toll that will begin to increase, possibly. I'm not saying that's what it is, but what I'm saying is, just because the COVID shit show is unraveling, it doesn't mean the program is dismantled. So we need to be vigilant about how this is going to progress to the next level. And there are always the doomsayers, like, Richie sees Jesus returning at this time. Everybody that lived at a time always saw Jesus returning at this time. So this is such a, it's the boy that cried wolf. Jesus is coming back. Well, Jesus, to address this subject of Jesus, most simply, whatever significance it may have to anyone, is that quite clearly this entity, this individual, suggested or even stated unequivocally that the kingdom of heaven is within. So how can this individual come, from outside? It's something that happens from within. So Richie from Boston, this is to you. If this is a return of Jesus, it's because Jesus has returned within you. Maybe that's why they call it reborn or something. You're reborn again. Jesus has been born within you again. That's resurrected within us. Well, Jesus simply for me is each person doing the right thing. That is the resurrection. That is the born again feeling that you have. When you have that sweet, when you're in that sweet spot of more than often doing the right thing, you are the kingdom of heaven. You are living that kingdom of heaven. This is magnificent. When I see this functioning in people, how caring, how people comes out as they act their conscience. This is magnificent. It's fabulous. So anyway, I'll end it here. I'll just say that the shit show is unraveling, but it's not the end. Something else is in the hopper for these fuckers. And like Kazakhstan, are people going to rip down the barricades and put their heads on spigots, on spikes? Spigots. On spikes? I don't think so. I don't think it's going to unravel that way in the West because we're too comfortable. It's not going to be that way. I may be wrong, but I don't think it's going to be that way. The whole, the cliff high types and all these high-minded, wishful thinking types, they're like broken clocks. They're right twice a day. and you listen and you hear some things that they say, and he has this people who will listen to Cliff High. Please, he's got tons of listeners. Be aware, this guy absolutely has no breath in his body. When he starts, hello humans, the guy is struggling to get breath in his body. He's oxygen deprived. This fellow is oxygen deprived. A very important aspect, the creative side of him, he always focuses on being a martial artist or a martial arts practitioner and all the elevated experiences he's had. I'm sure there's an incredible amount of knowledge here, but no wisdom. And because fundamentally, the most fundamental part in us is we need to breathe properly, and the guy doesn't breathe. So he's on some level quite toxic. The same as the hero of so many people. He's coming apart too. The Jordan Peterson thing is going to unravel very quickly as well. When people realize they've been had by these dupes, by these intellectual pretenders that try and they appear, again, reality is not what it appears to be. The Jordan Petersons are not what, well, to me, he's exactly what he appears to be. He's an addict. He's some deranged, toxic creature that is out there on the barricades defending the status quo, even though he doesn't appear that way to the people that still think they're thinking. But you're thinking out of some center within you that has nothing to do with conscience. And this Peterson character, like, what's his name, Gabor Mate, pointed it out very clearly. He said, the guy is full of unrecognized, repressed rage. And his entire operation is based on rage. And then when you see his daughter, I mean, I'm appalled by the way she presents herself. And they try to be credible. She comes on like some sort of stripper vixen that is supposedly has something to add to my life or anyone who's walking the path. Like Peterson makes these pronouncements about walking the path of being on the right side of things. And there are things that he says that make sense, but on the fundamental level, on the communication part of it, he's a victim of himself. He's a narcissist. He's a disgusting individual who uses his intellect to create thoughts in your mind that are called mirroring. He mirrors himself to us. This is what he relies on. He's very clever. He's a psychologist. He's practiced this. These are the people who deceive, the people who are like the Bernays types, these psychologist types who try to create their magic wizardry and spells on us, and then people are following, like, Chomsky said, people deserve their individuals. The countries deserve. I'll leave it there. Be aware, it's unraveling, but it's not the end. I think that this is going to expand in even a more convincing than the beer virus, something even more convincing than the beer virus. So be on alert, people. Be on alert. All the best.